What's going on, player?
What up, boss?
We're back with another edition of the Just Thinking podcast. I'm Virgil Walker, and I'm the wingman, man. I just try to keep it, keep it low key, man. Just enough fodder for you, for my man Daryl to get to rolling good, man. That's kind of how I do it.
And I'm Daryl Harrison. What's up, everybody? What's going on, Verge?
It's all good, man. Hey, listen, I gotta put it up first thing, man. First things first.
I know, man. I know.
It looks like Oklahoma is gonna be facing off with the Georgia Bulldogs.
That's right, man. Hey, man, you know what's crazy, man? Between me, you, and Dwayne, geographically, our local areas, man, we represent 3 of the 4 college football playoff spots.
Isn't that crazy?
Dwayne got Clemson.
Yeah.
I got Georgia. You got Oklahoma.
Yep.
You and Oklahoma and Georgia go head to head, man. Rose Bowl.
Yep. It's gonna be interesting, man. I'm pretty biased to my Sooners, but I was watching some Georgia football. Them boys ain't nothing to be played with down there.
Let me tell you something, man. Just like you were watching Georgia, I was watching Oklahoma.
Right.
And what you're going to be looking at, man, I think this game between the two, because listen, we've already seen Clemson, Alabama. This will be like the 3rd or 4th time they play each other.
Right.
I mean, boring, man. I mean, come on. I really don't care who wins that.
Right.
But when you look at really, man, all 4 of these squads has got NFL prospects all over the place. When you look at the Oklahoma offense, which is speed, against the Georgia defense, which is speed, that's a matchup that I'm looking forward to seeing, man. That's the game I want to see. Now, just to let you know, bro, how much I respect you, how much I, look up to you and admire your zeal.
Right.
Your Oklahoma Sooners, man. Before we went on the air, before you hit record, I went out, man, did some research because I'm like, what the heck is a Sooner? I'm like, what the heck? What the heck? And now, not only that, what's this Boomer Sooner?
Right.
So, man, why don't you? I know what I went ahead and researched, man. I'm more educated on what the genesis of all that is. But why don't you educate the listeners, man, on what's going on behind OU and the whole Boomer Sooner thing?
Boomer Sooner, man. A Sooner, man. When the state was becoming a state, they had a land rush. There was a specific time of day that the land rush was supposed to happen. And what ended up happening is everyone who wanted land in Oklahoma actually bum rushed the time frame and raced out to get plots of land before the time was scheduled that was actually supposed to take place. And so they were known as Sooners. Those were the folks who were getting there early. That look, I say, most everybody, those folks who live in Texas and close by, in Kansas and all that, a lot of them, when they come to Oklahoma, I say all they're doing is getting there as soon as they can. As soon as they can, they're recognizing it's the land where you want to be. And so we kind of Boomer and a Sooner, and it was initially considered kind of a pejorative, man. Kind of like, man, these guys are, they're uncouth, they're unkept, they're not your, they're not your proper protocol type people. And so that's kind of Sooner Nation, and the football team picked it up, and everywhere we go, we holler that moniker, man, Boomer Sooner. So it's all good.
I got you, man. Yeah, it's also seriously, man, though, I'm so looking forward to this game, man, because I think it's going to be the matchup, man. I mean, I watched Oklahoma just take apart. Who'd you guys just beat in the Big 12? TCU. Just took them apart, man. You guys outsized them. You out-hustled them. That's one thing that was glaring to me, man, how much bigger OU was than TCU was on both sides of the ball. So, but
and I think that's the case a lot with Big 12 with Big 12 action. Usually our front four, offensive side are just stout, man. My concern is our defense. Of course, they showed up for the TCU game. It just depends on if they could stop the run game. We'll be in a good spot.
Well, that's
right now. I don't.
I got to be honest with you, man. That's going to be a big if because UGA, they are 6 running backs deep. Okay, 6 running backs deep. So good luck.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
That's all I can say, man. Good luck, bro.
It's gonna be good, man. That's going to be. I think of the two semi final games. I think there'll be a lot of folks really interested to watch Oklahoma and Georgia matchup. Man, that'll be a lot of fun. That's gonna be a lot of fun to watch.
Well, congrats, man, on you guys making the playoffs, man.
Back at you, man, because it looks like y'all were gonna be outside of it for a minute, and y'all came and put the whoop up on who was that? Auburn.
We had to handle our business. Yeah, it was Auburn, man. I mean, that was an anomaly, man, when we lost to them. And you don't just put up 40-something points on this Georgia defense like that. So we knew that round 2 was going to be different, and it was. Absolutely. It wasn't even as close as that score, to be honest with you. I mean, UGA pretty much dominated on both sides of the ball. So looking forward to it, bro. Hope you guys stay healthy with practices and everything. Let's have a good
game. Absolutely, man. No doubt. Man, we got a chance to have some fun this week, man, doing some podcasting with the special folks down at, what was it, Presbycast?
Yeah, the peeps at Presbycast, man, the dopest, hippest, flyest Presbyterians, man, you will ever want to meet. Bruh, I mean, come on, man. Who would think?
I was shocked.
Dude, can you imagine? Now these are Presbyterians we're talking about, folks. We got down with Parliament Funkadelic.
Right.
Knee deep with Chortles and Resby.
Yep.
What up, Chortles? What's up, Resby? Shout out to you guys.
What's up, fam? No doubt.
If you guys are on Twitter, follow Presbycast. Presbycast. Follow Presbycast on Twitter. Some of the coolest Orthodox Presbyterian brothers you'll ever want to meet. So we appreciate them having us on the show. Not sure when that. Yeah, it's already aired. So if you go to their Twitter page, you'll be able to click on the link and listen to that podcast with Verge and myself. But shout out to those brothers.
No doubt, man. Like you said, just kind of two of the coolest cats ever, man. And man, they shocked me, man. They just really, what they knew, kind of old school. I can't even say R&B. I mean, it was back in the day, kind of funkadelic.
That was funk, man. That was funk. I can't believe Chortles hooked me up, man. I told him during the podcast, say, yo, bro, you got to close this show out with some knee deep with Parliament Funkadelic.
Oh yeah,
and that's exactly what he did, man. I'm like, wow.
No, man, here was the crazy part, man. It wasn't just that he knew a couple of songs; he knew artist names and kind of had some stories. And I'm like, what?
I'm like, dude, y'all are Orthodox. Y'all not even PCA. You guys are OPC. I'm like, that was like extra butter on the biscuit right there, man.
I was shocked, man.
Yeah, man. And then I had the privilege, man, of being able to be a guest on Pastor Mike Abendroth's podcast, No Compromise Radio.
Oh yeah. Talk about it, man. How'd that go?
Yeah, man. So that went great, man. Matter of fact, I believe Mike's gonna be publishing that podcast here sometime this week. But Mike's a great brother, man. My first time being able to talk with him. Mike's one of those master's seminary dudes, man. So he's good coming out of MacArthur's. But man, we just flowed, man. It was as if we'd known each other for a long time, man. That was our first time meeting. So if you're out on Twitter, go out and check out Mike Abendroth's page at NoCo, NOCO Radio, at NoCo Radio. Give Pastor Mike some love. And Mike, thanks again, man, for the opportunity to be on the show. Love you, man. So thanks for the plug, man. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Just putting in work, man. And doing just some great stuff, getting around a lot of different places and spaces. And, man, folks are reading what you're writing or being impacted by it, man, are listening to the podcast and following up, man. And it's just man, it's just amazing what God is doing and the doors that are opening and the folks that are checking in, man. It's been a blessing. It's been a brief but fun ride, but we're already seeing just kind of some of the fruit of the work, man. So that's really, really a blessing, man. To God be the glory, no doubt.
Amen, man. To God be the glory. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is all about him.
Absolutely, man. So I got the article that we kind of tee up this week, man. I had a few thoughts about it, man. I'm gonna let you tee this one up, and then kind of ideas and some things I'll throw in at you, man, as we kind of go along the way. But I was curious, man. What did you think when you saw this article? Tee it up for our listeners and kind of let them know what your thoughts are, man.
Yeah, man. We'll do verse. So for our listeners out there, I came across an article last week. The article itself was published on, November 30th. So this is pretty much still fresh news. It's a Sports Illustrated article. The headline reads, Colin Kaepernick is recipient of the 2017 Sports Illustrated Muhammad Ali Legacy Award. So that article kind of tweaked my interest when I saw that headline. Not so much for the fact that Kaepernick received the award. That's not necessarily newsworthy for me, given what Kaepernick, either begrudgingly or not, has come to represent within the social justice milieu that we find ourselves in today. So it's not that he necessarily won the award, but there was something within the article itself that really I was taken aback to read that caused me to sort of give it a sort of biblical context. So I want to talk about that a little bit tonight. But just to start, man, social justice advocates have had a pretty good week over the past week. And I say that because, Kaepernick wins the Muhammad Ali Legacy Award. And then not long after that, just might have been even earlier today, Kaepernick was honored by the ACLU with an advocacy award, and he was on hand to accept that award. And then just the other day, the NFL agreed to contribute up to $100 million to social justice causes. So all those three, sort of the convergence, the sort of perfect storm, you will, of all three of those things. That's why I say social justice advocates had a pretty darn good week last week. So hey, hats off to them. I mean, I don't know how this moves their agenda along, but again, I think those three things together give those folks something to be proud of. Though I do not side with them on anything that I can think of right now. But I want to get back, man, to this Kaepernick piece with this Sports Illustrated piece, man. And here's what got me on this piece. Matter of fact, the article, let me just mention the byline. So the article is by Michael Rosenberg. Mm-hmm. And again, the article is dated November 30th. And it basically goes on. Rosenberg writes about I guess, basically why Kaepernick, this award, why Kaepernick warranted this award being presented to him. And I don't have any qualms about that. Like I said earlier, given what Kaepernick has come to represent, I'm not surprised that he was named the winner of this award at all. But towards the end of the article, here's what really got me, where the writer says this, that hold on a second. Let me scroll down here towards the end. Yeah, so the last paragraph of the article reads this way. It says, someday America may well be a better place because of Colin Kaepernick. This is hard to see now. History is not meant to be analyzed in real time, but we are having conversations we need to have, and this should eventually lead to changes we need to make. Now, that's not the entirety of that last paragraph, but that's what caught my attention. And the reason it caught my attention is because, when we read in Ecclesiastes, right, verse that there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
And there are many questions that came to my mind when I read that couple of sentences there. Number one is that it's something very disheartening, and it is that we continue as a humanity, as human beings, we continue to seek salvation outside of Christ. We continue to look for someone else to crucify. And what I mean, I don't mean literally, but to crucify, that is to sacrifice something on our behalf towards that salvation, a temporal salvation that we naively continue to look for. In this case, it's Kaepernick. 50 some odd years ago, it was Martin Luther King.
Right.
And now you're hearing Kaepernick and King, their names mentioned almost interchangeably. Now it's as if Kaepernick is the new Martin Luther King.
Right.
So,
right.
But, you know, it's really disheartening and sad to see us as a human race continue to seek salvation outside of the redemption that can only be found in Jesus Christ. And that really struck a chord within me as I was reading this article. I mean, you got any thoughts on this, man? And
I do. I kind of, when you sent this to me, man, it was kind of, you know, I looked at it and I thought, okay, here we are back again with trying to elevate, you know, the Colin Kaepernick in the eyes of the public and in the minds of social justice warriors and the like. And I kind of read through the article, wasn't really surprised by any of it. I then thought about, I kind of went here. My thought was this: Ali Legacy Award, right?
Right.
And so I'm trying to wrap my mind around, okay, Ali, right? Now let me start by saying, man, I grew up, you know, I grew up on the end of Ali's career, you know, toward the end of his career. And so, but man, I would go back and watch. My dad was a big Ali fan. And so he, you know, everybody was, you know, Ali and, you know, this kind of thing. And so, you know, I went back and watched, and I will say, man, just from a humanistic standpoint, I get where he was coming from. The era and time that he, you know, the late 60s, early 70s was just a time of just complete transition. He was saying things at the time of his career about issues of race, about who he was as a boxer, that you didn't hear, not in a public setting, the average, you know, individual, black or otherwise, say. And so my next thought, man, was to go and to look into what did Ali achieve from a standpoint of civil rights. Right. Like apart from, you know, his bravado in the ring and who he was going to knock out and that kind of thing on issues and matters of race. I really wanted to kind of go back and kind of do a deep dive into what was he about and what did he fight for? What did he advocate for? And when you begin to do that, man, what you find is that he actually championed segregation. He actually championed races not mixing. He actually championed a lot of, in fact, if you begin to look at his views racially, they really mimicked what the Klan wanted, you know, for the most part. He was a part of the Nation of early on, a part of the Nation of Islam, which was a segregation movement, self-admitted. And they really didn't, they wanted kind of a reparations at the time, but they really wanted to separate themselves from the white race. In fact, there's a particular interview that Ali had where he was asked about issues of race, and what he said was that by nature, he says, and I'm quoting here, he said, quote, "I know whites and blacks cannot get along. This is nature." End quote. Ali replied that he was like that, and he even said, here's the crazy part, that's one of the reasons why he liked the segregationist Alabama governor George Wallace. He said he liked George Wallace because Wallace, like himself, was a segregationist. Yeah. And so when you think about the people that we put up in, in the forefront to say, hey, we've got the Muhammad Ali Legacy Award. We're doing some kind of revisionist history. We're really kind of ignoring. Again, not that Ali wasn't a great fighter, man. I was a fan of Ali, man. I was a fan of what he did in the ring. I even loved his bravado. It's kind of like my boy Baker Mayfield. There's a little bravado that again at times it crosses the line. You got to bring it back. So there's a part of me that kind of likes that, but from a standpoint of what the man actually stood for. He actually stood for kind of a segregationist thought process. And that's, again, no different from where Colin Kaepernick will eventually land with what he desires to do. But I do think that's interesting. That's kind of when I saw the article, man, that you sent, I kind of went to that level and thought, okay, these two are aligned in their thinking. The legacy, the civil rights legacy of Muhammad Ali and I don't even know that I don't even know that I would give Kaepernick the weight of calling him a civil rights leader. I don't know that he's done anything to advance anyone's rights. He's brought attention to himself, and all of what he's been involved in is a virtue signal. But I don't know that anything has really. I mean, you could at least, when you mentioned. You mentioned Martin Luther King. At least you can look at what Martin Luther King did and point to civil rights legislation that impacted all of us. And with this one, I don't think there's anything to really point to. Again, the article tried to say, hey, we've got to wait for the future to give us the definition of whether or not this was effective or right. But those are kind of some of my initial thoughts about this, man.
Yeah, but man, I mean, let's keep it real here, Verge. I mean, how long now have these same issues been addressed? Okay.
Right.
I mean, let's just keep it real, man. These are not new issues.
Right.
Yet here we are putting new people on the podium and on these platforms to address issues that are the same exact issues that were addressed 50, 70, 90 years ago.
Right.
And I guess the question I have is, well, many questions I have, but among those questions is, why hasn't anything changed?
Yeah.
Why hasn't anything changed? Listen, if the issue is equality, which I believe is a misnomer, and the reason I say that is because, again, as a Christian, I'm going to look at everything through the lens of what the Bible says.
Right.
The gospel doesn't say a word about this world, about Christ's desire for this world to be a world of equality. And when I say equality, I mean equality of outcome and equality of opportunity. Christ never promised that. The gospel doesn't promise that. This whole equality visage, and then this even worse, this sort of vision of egalitarianism that many social justice advocates are promoting and propagating is a worldly invention. The gospel repeatedly points us to the next life, not this one, to the next life.
Right.
So, but here we are, man. We're putting forth new individuals to address old problems. And the thing about it, I would agree with you 100%, brother. There's no way, and I don't remember Dr. King. I don't remember that. I was still a young boy at the time, but I don't remember that growing up in the 70s and whatnot. But here's the point: the civil rights advocates of that era had it a lot harder. They had so much more against them than does a Colin Kaepernick now. Here you have Kaepernick is a millionaire, who lives in comfort, who has whatever he wants at his fingertips. He had the luxury, and let's remind folks, he opted out of his contract with the San Francisco 49ers
Mhm.
over rumors that he was going to be traded, which he may very well have been or not. I don't know. But Kaepernick opted out of his contract.
Right.
He wasn't fired. He wasn't cut. He wasn't suspended. Any of that. He volitionally chose to opt out of his contract with the 49ers. And to date, he has not been re-signed.
Mhm.
But how he becomes equal with a Dr. King, though a younger version of Dr. King,
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
that boggles the mind because, to your point, brother, what has Kaepernick done other than, okay, be awarded all these accolades, all these plaudits? He's being lauded everywhere he goes. And all he has to do is show up.
Mhm.
King had his
Mhm.
house bombed.
Right.
KKK burning crosses on his front lawn. Attacks on his life. Ultimately, he was assassinated.
Mhm.
Kaepernick hasn't, nor probably will, have to endure any of that because he's got the world at his feet right now.
Well, one of the things I want to point people back to, man, and this whole conversation reminds me about the article that you wrote on justthinking.me. It's on social justice protests and our misguided quest for unity. One of the things that you said that I thought was incredibly eye-opening was when you talked about the fact that at least the civil rights movement, for all of its flaws and foibles, was anchored in the argument, the biblical worldview, the biblical argumentation of the Imago Dei. At least it was anchored in an idea that really said, you know what, regardless of race, we are all image bearers of God, created equal, deserving of distinct value, dignity, and worth. And as a result of that, I simply want to be treated in like manner. And you had folks who were walking around with the placards that said, I am a man. All of that aimed at establishing a biblical standard for how we are to be treated. And when you look at today and whether it's Colin Kaepernick or even the worldview at the time of one Muhammad Ali, he had a worldview that was steeped basically in racism with the Nation of Islam. In fact, he was quoted as saying, man, in an interview in 1975, it basically was arguing. It says Ali argued vehemently in a Playboy interview that interracial couples ought to be lynched. Okay, those were the comments. He said, "quote A black man should be killed if he's messing with a white woman." Wow. End quote. So here he makes that statement, and you've got the product of that kind of union receiving the irony in all of this, the backwardsness, the absurdity of a worldview devoid of the sovereign God of the universe begins to really expose itself. But I would just point people back to the article that you wrote on social justice protests and our misguided quest for unity. That when we elevate this idea of ethnocentric unity, that rather than gospel-centered proclamation and Christ-centered unity, that we're all those of us who are in Christ are one family, and that's the family of God, that we're missing the mark.
And here's, man, you talk about missing the mark. Here's the thing, though, Verge. The entire social justice movement right now is based on the premise that humanity innately possesses the capability to fix ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That is a fundamental flaw in their logic. That is a fundamental flaw, because the question has to be asked: at what point did humanity go wrong? There's got to be a genesis, man. There's got to be a point of origin whereby, because if the argument is that society is unjust, and society by definition is comprised of human beings. We're not talking about animals here. We're talking about human beings and human nature. So if the argument is that society somewhere went wrong, when did it go wrong and why? And a third question might even be how. But nobody's asking those questions. So it's a fundamental fallacy to think that $100 million from the NFL, that awarding Kaepernick or any other social justice advocate some type of award is going to be effectual in remedying the core problems that our society faces beyond the social justice agenda, beyond what some people would view as police brutality, beyond what somebody might view as income or housing or educational inequities, racial inequities, beyond the bullet points that compose the larger social justice agenda. The question must be asked: where did humanity go wrong? We must start there. Okay. And on that note, a couple quotes I want to read, man. I've been reading John MacArthur's book titled Think Biblically, Recovering a Christian Worldview. MacArthur says this in the chapter entitled Coming to Grips with Sin. He says, nothing we can do for ourselves. Right now, I've been arguing that the entire social justice premise is flawed because it's based on the assumption that human beings possess the innate capability to fix ourselves. Now, listen to what MacArthur says. He says, nothing we can do for ourselves will free us from the bondage of sin. Adam's transgression had a catastrophic effect not only on him and his environment, but also on his progeny. Now, that's us. Including you and me, But we cannot make sense of our moral plight until we come to grips with where it all began. And that is exactly my argument. Social justice advocates are treading water. They're wasting time unless and until they're willing to deal with the very question that MacArthur raised and what I've been talking about here, until they are willing to deal with the origin of all these issues. They're not going to get anywhere. Listen,
right?
It said in Mark chapter 7, Jesus said this. He said, from within, out of the heart of men. This is Mark 7, verse 21 through 23. Jesus said, from within, out of the heart of men, proceed the evil thoughts, fornications, thefts, murders, adulteries, deeds of coveting and wickedness, as well as deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All these evil things proceed from within and defile the man. Now, explain to me, Virgil. I'm going to pretend I'm Denzel Washington's character in the movie Philadelphia. So explain to me, explain this to me like I'm a 6-year-old, as Denzel would say.
Right.
Explain to me, how is $100 million going to change a person's heart?
It's going to amplify what's in the heart, bro.
It's going to amplify it. It's going to amplify it. Exactly right.
Absolutely.
So, but don't we do this though, man? Don't we have a history of doing it? And when I say we, I'm speaking generally. Let me emphasize generally before, I have to put on my asbestos suit here. Generally speaking, this whole social justice milieu is being led by and incorporates, for the most part, Black Americans. Okay, for the most part, not exclusively, but for the most part. But why is it, Verge, that it seems anyway, that it's always Black people who need a leader? Why are we as Black Americans always looking for somebody to take us through another exit? And then we make the Exodus analogy. Like we're just trying to make it to the promised land. We're just trying to get across the Red Sea. We're just trying to cross over the Jordan. But why is it always black people who seem like we need a leader to take us somewhere? Now it's Kaepernick. Now Kaepernick's the leader, whether he wants that role or not. Right. He's it. Like we were talking earlier, back in the day, it was Martin Luther King, but now it's Kaepernick. But now here we are, man. Black people again. We're looking for another Moses to lead us to the promised land. But people forget Moses didn't cross into the promised land. He didn't get to cross. He saw it from a distance, but he himself didn't get to go. So to whatever extent folks are trying to contrast Kaepernick as some kind of Moses leading black people to this sort of social justice nirvana in this life, you might want to find another leader, because Moses didn't make it over. But why is it always us, man? That's the question. Why is it always us?
Yeah. No, I unfortunately, man, I think you're right. I have a tendency to kind of do a throwback to just an earlier time. And I'm assuming again, you had phenomenal people who were leading the charge. But really, man, if you would read anybody that really takes the time to read, you go back and read, any of the biographies about King, and you hear about his "I Have a Dream" speech. The reality was, man, black folks were talking about marching on Washington way before King ever got. Really, there were political leaders who understood that blacks were angry, that they wanted to see change take place, and primarily in this separate but equal system that they were suffering under, with Jim Crow law still for the most part in place, in busing and in housing and water fountains and the like, and they were gonna make their grievances heard in Washington. They were talking about march and had planned a march, and were gonna do whatever they were gonna do with regard to march initially, and it was political leaders who saw it best to go tap King and put him in the front of what was already taking place in the hearts of people. But here's the thing: I still go back to what you said, man, which was at the end of the day, man, this was a charge that was taking place from the heart condition of individual. I mean, it really was a desire to see things different, to see what they understood as the Imago Dei be lived out in the spaces and places where they were. Man, $100 million is not going to change your heart. A march on Washington still hadn't changed hearts. We're still dealing with the same
We're
issues.
Still dealing with same things 54 years after the March on Washington. We're still dealing with the same issues.
Absolutely. And go ahead.
It's just, again, I wish people would just see this clearly, brother. If the argument is that society is the problem, and if society is comprised of human beings, then ipso facto, human beings are the problem. So the question must be asked again: where did that problem originate? Now, as a Christian, I'm a believer in original sin. Sin is in our DNA, so it's not that like a lot of people believe, where a man is born good, like that old Earth, Wind and Fire song. That's the way of the world, where the chorus goes, "A child is born with a heart of gold, but the way of the world makes his heart grow cold." Oh no, biblically speaking, a child is born with a heart that's sinful. Matter of fact, a child is conceived with a heart that's sinful. So as a Christian, that's my answer to the question. It's not where humanity went wrong. Humanity has always been wrong. But for the social justice argument to have any legs, any validity here, if someone's asking or not, where did society go wrong? That's got to be the question. That's got to be the fundamental starting point of any type of approach, strategy, tactics to resolve anything that social justice advocates might argue is wrong with the world today? Because if the answer is us, and yet you're saying the problem is us, then us isn't the answer. I don't mean to be grammatically incorrect there, but the answer is not us. Just another quick quote, man, from a book by William Edgar. It's a book called Created and Creating. That's Created and Creating. The subtitle is A Biblical Theology of Culture. Edgar says real quick, he says, had the fall, that is the fall of Adam and Eve into sin in Genesis 3. He says, had the fall not occurred, nothing would threaten human dignity and no class barriers would exist. So even Edgar is saying that the problems that we're looking at in the culture today have their origins in the fall of Adam and Eve in the garden. Money is not going to fix that.
No, it's not. It's not. And the reality is, I don't know what you go back to the original article that we kind of talked through. Okay, so Kaepernick receives an award, the Muhammad Ali Legacy Award.
Right.
Now what? Now what?
Exactly.
And what is that? What's changed? Whose life is now resolved? I mean, what?
Right. How did your life improve as a result of Kaepernick winning that award?
Right.
Is your life better now, Verge?
Not my ain't nothing changed over here. You know, that's bad English.
Ain't nothing changed. You know, and again, just going back to the writer of the article, with all due respect, I'm not trying to be disparaging to the individual at all, but for him to say someday America may well be a better place because of Colin Kaepernick, really? No, it won't. People said that about King.
Yeah, that's great. That's good.
And you know what? Why is it, man, that, you know, because we brought up his name several times. Why is it, though? And I've asked this question of people personally. Why is it when we talk about these kind of issues around social justice, racial equality, all other kind of inequalities or equalities, whatever term you want to use, why is it people want to quote King rather than quoting what Jesus said? People want to quote, well, you know, King had this dream whereby, you know, everyone would be judged on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Well, the eternal God, who is Jesus Christ, but let's talk of Christ in the context of his human nature, predated King by almost 2,000 years. And in John 13, Jesus said, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you. So, but why do we want to quote a speech from 1963 as opposed to the word of the Son of God, who predated that speech by about 2,000 years, who told us how to love one another, how to treat one another, who told us in obedience to his command, you wouldn't have to worry about whether or not someone is looked at and valued and esteemed based on their character versus the color of their skin. You wouldn't have to worry about that. But we want to quote King rather than Christ. You know, I'm puzzled by that, bro.
Yeah. No King but Christ, right?
No King but Christ. I see what you did there, man. That was good. Right. That was good.
Yeah. Man, it's good. Listen, brother, man, always good to chop it up with you, man. And we always land right place, man. Lifting up the cross of Christ, lifting up the name of Jesus, lifting up what he said about these issues as we look at the world around us and folks are grappling for answers. You know, that the answers are already provided, man. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and knowing that no one gets to the Father except by and through him. And so we've got it. That's where it starts at the cross of Christ, man. Any last words as we wrap it up for tonight, man?
Yeah, man, just real quick. I just want to read from Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 through 8 here, and just remind us all of what the root problem is, man.
That's good.
Paul writes in Ephesians 2, and you were dead in your trespasses and sins. That's the problem, folks. That's the problem right there. It's not inequality of any type. Whatever issues you think are the problems in our society today is because we're dead in our trespasses and sins, in which you formerly walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, of the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience. Among them we too all formerly lived in the lusts of our flesh. This is the problem with us today. We're living in the lusts of our flesh. Okay? It says, among them we too all formerly lived in the lust of our flesh, indulging the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, even as the rest. But here are the two most important words in all the Bible. But God. But God, being rich in mercy because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our transgressions, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. So yes. I want to just leave everyone with that is a fundamental problem here, folks. And until we yield our hearts to the saving gospel, the transformative gospel of Jesus Christ, nothing is going to change, regardless of the amount of money you throw at it.
Amen. Amen. Brother, always good to chop it up with you, man, and keeping first things first. I definitely appreciate it, man. We'll be back at it next week, man.
All right, Boomer. We'll see you next week, man. Take care.
Have a good one, brother. All right. God bless, brother.